Okay, today's lesson is lesson 16, Thomas Jefferson. If you made a list of the interests you have, it would probably be quite long. God gave you many diverse talents and passions because He will use them as part of His plan for your life as it fits into His larger story. Thomas Jefferson was also a man with abundant interests, which he pursued with intensity and vigor. He was a true Renaissance man in the sense that he was accomplished in many different areas, including the study of the law, farming, music, writing, architecture, and politics. He was known as a quiet and gentle man. He used his gifts in writing to express his strong belief in political freedom. His many abilities led to a life of distinction and accomplishment, most notable in the shaping of the United States government as both the author of the Declaration of Independence and the third president. Born April 13, 1743, Jefferson spent his childhood in a lush valley in the shadow of Virginia's Blue Ridge Mountains. He grew up with a love for the land that never faded, and much of his early life was spent outdoors with his 9 siblings. Farming, too, was one of his dearest passions. He even said to have grown the first tomatoes in the United States. He lost his father at the age of 14 and inherited Shadwell, his family's plantation. He renamed it Monticello, meaning Little Mountain in Italian, when he built a small brick house at the highest point on the 500-acre property. Jefferson designed and built the house himself. It was his first foray into the world of architect, one of the many interests he pursued. He designed, redesigned, and added to and re-imaged his home throughout his life, and it was a source of great pride to him. It still stands today, and you can even visit if you are in Charleston, Virginia area. Monticello was the home to which he brought his young wife Martha when they were married in 1772. They shared many interests, including a passion for music. They loved to sing and play together, Thomas on the violin and Martha on the piano. The Jeffersons were blessed with 6 children in 10 years. Sadly, only 2, Martha and Mary, lived to adulthood. Their enjoyment of music was passed on to their children, who played the harpsichord, an instrument similar to a piano except with strings. Look it up. And a guitar. Tragedy came again to the Jefferson home in 1782 when Jefferson lost his beloved wife, and he never remarried. Jefferson studied under a private tutor, and education was very important to his family. He went on to college and was trained as a lawyer before he entered the political arena, where he was elected to the Virginia Assembly. He was later selected as a representative to the Second Continental Congress. This was the position that he led to the accomplishment of which he was the most proud, authoring the Declaration of Independence. A stint as the governor of Virginia was the next for Jefferson, and then he spent some time abroad as the United States representative to France after the war ended. When George Washington was elected president, Jefferson was asked to be the Secretary of State, the person responsible for the relationship of the United States with other countries. While Jefferson had a lot of respect for Washington, he had some misgivings about the way the office of the president was being set up in the United States. He believed that the central government should not have to have that much power, as they were a threat to the rights of individuals and states. As you have learned, this was a serious source of conflict in the young government as Jefferson clashed with other members of Washington's cabinet, such as Alexander Hamilton and Jefferson's old friend, John Adams. The divide grew until Jefferson could no longer tolerate what was happening. In his mind, the United States was becoming too much like Britain, the government they had fought a war to escape. This fear led Jefferson to resign from Washington's cabinet and create a new party, the Democratic Republic. Republicans. This was significant. It marked the beginning of the party system in the United States government, which still exists today. The party system. In the United States government, representatives are elected by the people. There are political parties or groups with similar opinions that seek to influence the decisions that the government makes. During the election of 1800, the two parties were the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, which correspond today to the Democrat and Republican parties. When a political party wins an election, having the most candidates in the legislature and winning the office of the president, that party has more control over the policies of the government, at least for that term. Jefferson decided he would run for president after Washington, and the first two-party election occurred in 1796. In the last lesson, you learned that John Adams won that election, which left Thomas Jefferson as vice president. The two were very much at odds with one another and supposedly only spoke directly once during the whole time in office together. When Jefferson won the presidency in the election in 1800, Adams was so perturbed that he wouldn't attend Jefferson's inauguration, something he later regretted. The third president. Jefferson served as the president of the United States for 2 terms, from 1801 to 1809. His first term was marked by the completion of the Louisiana Purchase, which nearly doubled the size of the country, something we will take a deeper dive into the next lesson. Jefferson strongly believed in westward expansion. He felt the development of agricultural economy in America was the key to success. In his second term, conflict abroad became a major issue. Jefferson was challenged to keep the country out of a war between Britain and France, which he was able to do. During his time in office, an amendment to the Constitution was passed that changed the process for electing the president and vice president. This new amendment meant that no one else would be in the uncomfortable position he and Adams were in during their time in office together. It wasn't very helpful to the country to have leaders who were so at odds they wouldn't even speak to one another. After finishing his second term as president, Jefferson returned to Monticello to live out his days in the pursuit of his various passions. He loved to entertain friends and dignitaries, and his home was a gathering place for those he had met throughout the world over his lifetime of public service. He nurtured relationships by corresponding and writing as well, and he's said to have written over 16,000 letters in his life. Writing and research in science and farming filled his days, but one of the proudest efforts was completed during his retirement, the founding of the University of Virginia. Did you know that Thomas Jefferson was an avid collector of books and read extensively? He once commented, "I cannot live without books." His personal library of more than 6,000 books was sold to the Library of Congress and became the cornerstone of its collection. Today, the Library of Congress is the world's largest library and can be visited in person in Washington, D.C. Or if you'd like, you can explore it right from where you are, online at loc.gov. The University of Virginia. Thomas Jefferson maintained that education should be accessible. In his retirement, he worked to create a public university that would encourage students and teachers to learn from one another. He was sure that the success of the United States depended on its citizens being well educated. He was involved in every phase of the planning and execution of the university, raising money, designing the buildings and campus, and selecting the curriculum. He was so satisfied with the university, he even listed the accomplishment on his gravestone, Father of the University of Virginia. Jefferson lived his life as a testament to beauty and diversity of the world he inhabited. In childhood, his love for world, music, and academics marks his life. As he grew, he maintained these pursuits and added more: architecture, the study of law, foreign languages, he spoke 4, and politics. There were few disciplines he did not explore. He used his talents for writing to reveal his discoveries to his contemporaries, but also to future generations. Many of his ideas are still in practice today. The ripples of his unique perspective and passion for all that life offered can encourage us in our own pursuits as we consider the legacy of Thomas Jefferson, Renaissance man, period. That ends lesson 16, but you can end up talking about it. Jefferson intensely pursued many of his interests during his lifetime. Take some time to talk with your family about what your interests are. How do you think God might use those passions in your life? Don't forget to include God in the conversation. Remember, He created you and would love to reveal to you His good plans for your life.